Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to knit the Seersucker stitch. This is a really great stitch pattern to learn when you are moving on from the more simple 4-row repeats and you're wanting to tackle something a little bit more adventurous. It gives these beautiful little raised diamond shapes in the fabric, which gives any project that you want to work a nice bit of extra interest. It isn't a reversible stitch, so the front looks like this with these nice diamonds, but the back still looks neat and tidy, but it doesn't have any sort of defined pattern on it like the front does. So without further ado, grab some needles, grab some yarn, and let's get knitting. The pattern multiple for the seersucker stitch is 4 plus 1. So you want to cast on a stitch count that is a multiple of 4, and then you want to add one more stitch to your cast on. The reason we add that one stitch on is so that we have a piece of fabric that is symmetrical. Without adding that extra stitch on, then your left hand side will look slightly different to your right hand side. And as I'm a sucker for symmetry, I prefer to add that one extra stitch on the end. So you can cast on as much or as little as you want, as long as it's a multiple of 4, and then just add that one extra stitch to finish off. I'm using the long tail cast on method, but you can use whichever cast on method you like. Row 1 of the seersucker stitch is as follows. You are going to work knit 1, purl 1, all the way across until you have one stitch left. For your last stitch, you're going to knit it, so it's knit 1 at the end. So row 1 was knit 1, purl 1 all the way across until you have one stitch left, and then you want to knit that final stitch. Row 2, you want to work purl 1, knit 1 all the way until you have one stitch left. So purl 1, knit 1 all the way along until you have one stitch left on your left hand needle. For your final stitch, you want to purl it. So to recap row 2, you are purl 1, knit 1 all the way until you have one stitch left, and then you are going to purl that stitch to finish your row. Row 3 is a right side row, and we want to work the repeat of the following 4 stitches. You want to purl the first stitch and then knit 3. So that's purl 1, knit 3 all the way along the row until you have one stitch remaining on your left hand needle. And for your final stitch, you want to purl. So that's purl 1, knit 3 all the way along until you have one stitch left, and you're going to purl that final stitch. Row 4, a wrong side row, is the mirror image of what we have just worked. So you want to knit the first stitch and purl the next 3. So that's knit 1, purl 3, all the way along your row until you have 1 stitch left. And if you have finished your repeats correctly, you should have a purl 3 and then 1 stitch left on your left hand needle, which you will knit. So that's knit 1, purl 3, all the way along until you have 1 stitch left, and you want to knit that final stitch. Row 5 is a repeat of row 1, so you want to knit 1, purl 1, all the way along until you have 1 stitch remaining. That's knit 1, purl 1, all the way along until you have 1 stitch remaining. That final stitch on your left hand needle should come after a purl 1, and you're just going to knit that final stitch. So you should always be finishing your row with the same stitch you started with. So row 5, just to recap, is knit 1, purl 1 all the way across until you have 1 stitch left, and then you're going to knit that last stitch. Row 6 is a repeat of row 2, so you want to purl 1, knit 1, that's purl 1, knit 1, all the way across your row until you have that 1 remaining stitch on your left hand needle. And just like before, you're going to purl the final stitch. So row 6 is purl 1, knit 1 all the way along until you have 1 stitch left, and you're going to purl that final stitch. Row 7 and row 8 are probably the 2 rows that you are going to find trickiest to remember, just because of the way the repeat works, but once you have gone over them a couple of times, they will stick in your memory. So for row 7, you want to work knit 2, purl 1, knit 1. That's your 4 stitch repeat. Knit 2, purl 1, knit 1. It helps if you say them out loud to yourself the first few times you do these rows, and you want to repeat that combination of those 4 stitches all the way to the end of the row, when you should have 1 stitch remaining on your left hand needle. So that's knit 2, purl 1, knit 1. When you get to your final stitch, you want to knit that final stitch. And we always have this odd little stitch on the end because we have worked multiples of 4 plus 1 to give us some symmetry. So just to recap row 7, you want to knit 2, purl 1, knit 1, all the way across in groups of 4 until you have 1 stitch left, and you want to knit that final stitch. Row 8 is the final row of our repeat, and after this point you would go back to row 1. So for row 8, you want to purl 2, knit 1, and purl 1. So it's the mirror image of what we have just worked. So that's purl 2, knit 1, purl 1, and work that group of 4 stitches across until you have 1 stitch left on your left hand needle, and that should be at the end of a block of 4 stitches. So you should have just finished a block of 4 when you get to the end of your row. And then your very last stitch of row 8 will be a purl one. At this point, your repeat will look something like this, and you would be forgiven for looking at this and thinking, hey, I can't really see any diamonds forming there. Have I done something wrong? The answer is no. The seersucker stitch is one of those stitches where you do really have to work 2 or 3 of those pattern repeats before you really start to get any sort of stitch definition forming. It's one that sneaks up on you. So you work your first 2 repeats and you really think that everything is going wrong and it doesn't look like it should. And then all of a sudden, after the 3rd repeat, these diamonds just start appearing almost out of nowhere. It even threw me the first time I knitted this. I was like, hey, this isn't working. What am I doing wrong? But you have to trust the process and keep working those sets of 8 row repeats until your project is as big as you want it. When you do get to the end of the project and you're ready to cast off, a top tip from me would be to cast off on a row 1 in pattern. So you will have just finished a row 8 and then you would go ahead and cast off in a knit 1, purl 1 pattern. That means that your project will be symmetrical top and bottom as well as either side. And that's how you knit the seersucker stitch. As always, I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you do go away and make anything using this stitch pattern, then I would absolutely love for you to tag me in it so I can see what you're all up to, and I will see you again for another tutorial soon. Bye!